So this is Jennifer Nash. I am author of Be Human, Lead Human, How to Connect People and Performance. I am the founder, chief coach, and CEO of Jennifer Nash Coaching and Consulting. And in my episode for the Business Growth Architect Show, I will share about old school leadership, leader of the future, being stuck and what to do about it, how to bring humanity to everyday interactions at work, and the potential outcomes of that. Sometimes they're positive and sometimes they're negative. Yeah, so if these topics are of interest to you, head on over and check out Beata's show and take a listen. Let us know what you think.
And hello, fabulous person. Beata Gillette here. I am the host of the Business Growth Architect Show, and I want to welcome you to today's episode where we discuss how to navigate strategy and spirituality to achieve time and financial freedom. Truly successful people have learned how to master both, a clear intention and a strategy to execute that in a spiritual practice that will help them to stay in alignment and on purpose. Please enjoy the show and listen to what our guest today has to say about this very topic. Welcome back, Beata Gillette here. And today we're talking about a topic I think could not be more timely at this very moment. And it's all around how to be human and how to lead human. And with me on the show today is author and speaker and trainer, Dr. Jennifer Nash. Jennifer, I'm so excited for you to be here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Beata. I'm excited to be here too.
For somebody who is not familiar with you, will you tell them who you are and what problem do you solve for your clients?
Sure. So I'm a coaching consultant. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I help organizations elevate their people capability. So oftentimes I will describe it as, I help organizations help people interact better together and elevate everyone's performance.
One of the questions since I've spoken with you for the first time keeps percolating in my head, and I know you talk about this in your book. Is there such a thing as an old school leader and a leader of the future?
So in my book, I actually talk about old school leadership with the parentheses around it as this type of command and control leader, someone who thinks that they have to have all the answers, that they have to do everything by themselves, they can't ask for any help, and they essentially dictate to those around them what they should do, how they should do it, when they should do it. But often they don't tell them why they should do it. There's this notion that leaders having to be the be-all and end-all is that old school kind of leadership. And especially since the pandemic, what we've seen is the role of a leader is really evolving into the future leader, as you mentioned, to be more of a human leader, right? Someone who is actually very skilled and adept at coaching others and facilitating groups and helping them all work together to come to that common outcome.
I like this a lot. So you refer to this as a leadership pandemic. What do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is that leaders typically, from the time they're put into a people leadership role until the time that they get leadership training is actually around 15 years. Jacob Morgan has done that research and shown that that's a huge gap. And so we promote people into these positions of authority and leading others, and we expect them to know what to do, but we don't give them any training to do it. And so they're walking around with these toolkits or their toolboxes that have all these tools in them to lead projects and to lead tasks, but they don't really have any tools in there to lead people.
So that brings me to the KPIs and the dashboards, because then the natural bridge that I'll make in our conversation would be to say, well, we teach them accountability, we teach them dashboards, we teach them operating systems, we teach them how to look at the numbers, efficiencies. So you're saying that that's all fine and good, but where is that where the real story is being found on what's happening?
So I think KPIs and dashboards are extremely important. You have to have measurements and evaluate how you're running the business. That is 100% necessary. What I'm saying is perhaps there's a different way to measure the way we lead people. Right? Maybe we have a different dashboard and KPIs for how we lead people. One of the ways I chose to approach that in my book is to use the Human Leader Index, which is essentially a dashboard to tell you how are you doing on your human and relational skills capabilities. where do you fall? Where might there be opportunity for improvement? And what are some recommendations that you can do to get you to where you want to be?
Do you think that the objective of a leader is to always get beneficial outcomes, or is sometimes the leader the person that gets people to the crossroads to make the decision on which way to go?
Mm. So leaders don't operate in a vacuum. So I would say no to the first option that you just suggested. But I would say that the goal of a leader is really to help people achieve at their best. So whatever that person needs, right? Maybe they need the leader to step back and stop micromanaging. Maybe they need the leader to set a clear vision so they understand where are they actually going. Maybe they need the leader to facilitate and get the group to work together and share information so that everyone has what they need to help achieve the desired outcome. So I think it's a dance of figuring out what is needed as part of the art and science of leadership, and then helping people figure how to help people get where they want to go.
Yeah, I do think that that's often misunderstood in leadership in general. I mean, at least from what I'm seeing, that people think a good leader gets everybody to perform all the time. I think a good leader sometimes just helps people to figure out if they're in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And that might be the most successful leadership of all of them, is to help people to identify where they sort of belong. That gets me to one of the other topics that I feel you go a little bit deeper in than most, the notion of being stuck. Now, in your work, what does that mean, being stuck? How do you recognize that somebody's being stuck?
Oh, such a great question. I think there's a couple different ways to recognize how someone is stuck. I think first and foremost is when they are not getting the desired outcomes that they're looking for. That is one way to recognize that they're stuck, or that you are stuck. I think another way to recognize that you're stuck is when you feel like there aren't any other options, that, perhaps you have without knowing it, you have a fixed mindset in a way of looking at something, as opposed to a growth mindset, which helps you open up to other possibilities. I think another way you can identify when you're stuck is if you are constantly passing judgment on things and putting out a point of view about it without taking the time to ask questions or learn anything else new about it. So demonstrating that curiosity about yourself, about your thinking, about your behaviors in the world around you can help you get unstuck, because it helps you find different ways to think about things and consider things from different perspectives.
Is it always good to be in a growth mindset? Or can I sometimes be okay being in a fixed mindset?
I think it depends on what you're talking about. I know I prefer chocolate ice cream, but I'm going to try this Superman because it sounds like a fun idea and it looks pretty. And you're not going to like the taste anyway, then maybe your fixed mindset is where you need to be there, because you're not going to be happy with the Superman. But on the other hand, like a growth mindset and having a fixed mindset, if you're in a space where maybe you are supposed to be like working in an innovation factory, for example, and you have a fixed mindset, that's definitely going to be a problem for you in that space. So I think a lot of it is contextual, and I think you need to understand what context you're in order to know, like, which mindset should I have here, or which mindset should I be applying here.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a fascinating conversation with one of the groups that I led, and there was a moment where somebody says, "I'm making a conscious choice to be in a fixed mindset because there's so many things going on in my life that this is the one area where I cannot go. This is the one area in my life where I consciously decide that I'm going to stay at status quo without any external changes or influences." And I never had thought about it that way. So I wanted to get your opinion on that. But I think you're absolutely correct. It's contextual and it's situational, because it sometimes you have to make that decision because it's just too much and you have to focus on one thing over the other.
Right. And oftentimes, we have so many things coming at us. It is not beneficial to spread ourselves extremely thin and try to do all these different things. In that moment, it's better to have that fixed focus and get that one thing done, or whatever that is the priority, and then worry about the other things and maybe expanding, the view at that point. So yes, I think I agree with you.
Thank you so much. So, one of the things that the main concept is, of course, humanity. Will you tell us a little bit about where is this concept of more humanity? What did you see that made you even say this is necessary right now?
Oh, it's such a great question. I wish more people would ask me that question.
Something must have happened, and you're
Yes.
like,
Yeah,
uh-uh.
so here's where it came from. So in the book, Be Human's on this side, Be Human, Lead Human, I tell the story about when I'm working in the corporate world, and I was working for a leader who my department had decided to do like an employee morale event, right? And this was during the recession, and though morale was pretty low. And so they had bought these paper plates and some markers and things, and they scattered them on these tables in the building. And they said, "Oh, come on down and write a letter of appreciation to someone." And I thought, "Oh, that's a great idea." So I come down and I'm thinking about who I want to write my letter to. And I thought, the CEO of the company like has a pretty tough job right now. He's trying to save us from going extinct, essentially. And so that's got to be pretty hard. And I bet he's not getting very many thank yous. So I thought, okay, I'm going to write my letter to him. And so I did. And a couple weeks later, I get called down to like my boss's office. And on the table is this envelope. And I knew instantly that it was my letter in that envelope. And so these bosses are telling me, "Hey, like, we can't get this to him." I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? Like, did we have to let, interoffice mail support people go? Like, why can it not get to him? I don't understand." And they're like, "Well, we just, essentially it's not appropriate and we don't think you should send it to him. So here, you need to take it back." And in that moment, like, Beata, I just felt like I am really sick of not having my voice being heard. And I am not going to say that that's okay anymore. And so I took the envelope, I left the office, I walked out the door, I went right to my car, I got in my car, I drove over to world headquarters, and I went up to the 12th floor, and the CEO wasn't in. And so I asked his admin, "Hey, would you mind giving this to him when he gets in?" And she said, "Sure." And so I dropped it off. I went, back on my way, and I didn't think again of it at all. And so a couple weeks later, I get this voicemail on my phone, and it's from the CEO, and he's telling me how grateful he is and how much that meant to him to have that message of appreciation from me. And I am just blown away because I'm like, holy cow, like, this person doesn't know me. Like, I'm this people leader far down the ladder from him. Like, and yet he's trying to save the company, but yet he takes a few minutes to like tell me like, thank you. That was astounding to me. And then a couple weeks after that, I get this interoffice envelope from the office of the president, and I'm like, oh, what's this? And so I open it up, and inside there is a handwritten letter that says, "Dear Jennifer," with a heart around my name. And it says, different things, right? And I put a copy of the letter in the book. So,
Yes, it's in the
yeah.
book. Yes.
And I just like, I sat back in my chair, and in that moment, I just started crying because it was the first time in my entire 16-year career that I'd been working so far, like as full-time employment, that a leader actually took the time to make me feel like I was seen and heard, and that I mattered. And not just like as an employee for the company who could, do work and, get things done, but like just me as a human being. And I really wanted to understand, why are there not more leaders like that? It's not that hard, why are there not more leaders like that? And so that is how I got interested in this topic of more humanity at work. And I tell the rest of the story in the book, but that's the...
And you're even emotional today when you talk about it.
because it touched me so much, like to get that message from him, like not just the voicemail, but then on top of that, like to get the handwritten letter. I mean, it really just blew me away. Like, if you think about your career, or your listeners are thinking about their careers, how many times over the course of their employment have they had a leader acknowledge them in that way? Probably very rarely. And so that emotional tie, like that was so strong for me. It's as strong today as it was the day that I got it.
I can absolutely see that. And I think that, to your point, that we are so trained in this culture. I actually think this comes from our educational system of the learning existing information, remembering existing information, repeating existing information, and then getting an A if you do it exactly like it's already been done before. And then you go in a corporate world and everybody says, "But now we need you to innovate." You go like, "Well, how is that even going to work? If I've been rewarded in a different system and now you want to reward me on a different system that I don't even know how to operate in." And then what happens is this notion of the teacher pointing out what you're bad at, right? And I see this in corporations all the time. I did an engagement in a pharmaceutical company, and we did a super skills exercise where people talked about what they were really good at and what they saw about themselves. And this guy that I've been watching everywhere I go is like, "Hey, John, how are you, John? No, John, come on over, sit over here." And he goes like, "I don't think I'm really good at anything." And I said, would it be a fair assessment that every time you walk in the room, everybody wants to be around you and that there's no conflict you can solve? And when everybody smiles when you show up, he says, yeah. I said, and you don't think there's any value to that?
Yeah. Right. Because
But it takes this conscious effort, I think, to your point, to say something. I actually have made it a point that at a lot of the end of my conversations or my facilitations, even when I talk to my high performance coach, I say, I appreciate you.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, our systems are set up so that, they don't reward what we should be rewarding. And the ways that we learn, we mimic others' behavior. And so when we get into the workplace, the role models that we see most of the time are not those that are appreciating and showing that others matter, right? Oftentimes we see with leaders, it's all about their ego and it's all about their power trip. And we see a lot of that in the news all the time. And so when you're surrounded by those role models and you don't see examples of other options, you sort of have a fixed mindset.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. So, Jennifer, one of the concepts that you talk about in the book, and you have this culture of love by design graph about creating a value for all. Now, we talk a lot about spirituality and a sort of a mindset, and I think this ties really into that because a lot of the spiritual teachings are about abundance, gratitude, there's enough for everybody. How does what you do tie into that, and does it?
Oh, 100%. So I firmly believe that there is enough for everyone to go around, right? There often will be a type of conversation happening around coaches or consultants that, like it's limited and it's fixed and that we have to fight each other for the work. And that's not the case. There is enough to go around. And we are all so different and we all bring different attributes to the table that each person will find the person who is right for them. The framework that you're referring to is an example of Alan Mullally's working together principles and practices. And one of the first principles in his operating model is people, love them up, right? And show them that they are appreciated, show them that they matter, that they have value, that they are heard and seen. And so his example that I tell in the story, my personal story, that's exactly what he did. He showed me that I was valued and that I was loved and that I mattered. And when we look at stakeholders, when we look at the Business Roundtable, 183 companies signed that agreement that, stakeholders are now important. It's not just the shareholders and making them money, but it's all the stakeholders. So it's all the internal people that work for the organization. It's all the external people that work with the organization, and making sure that everyone there is sharing and learning and growing and deriving value from those interactions is what that business model going forward should be and what it looks like.
I think the message that I'm hearing is that you're making a case that leadership in itself is really changing. And we talk about this all the time, that leadership is a dynamic way, right? That things always change. But I think you are setting this up a little bit more clearer than most, where it's not this servant leadership or conscious leadership or a particular mindset. Your premise is much simpler. It's like, be human. No, you're working with humans. Incorporate all the humans that are part of this process that you are currently in. Am I understanding this right? Because I want really our listeners, the Beehive, to understand what makes you different in the way you approach leadership.
Yes, that is exactly what makes me different in how I approach leadership. It is that simple. We have to be human so that we can let everyone else around us be human too. We as leaders, we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be the people who don't make any mistakes. We don't have to be the people where we have all the answers and we have to do everything and we can't ask for help. We can simply just be ourselves, and that is enough. And when we put ourselves first and we take care of ourselves in that way and we show up as human, we give everyone else around us the permission and the empowerment to be human as well. Because that way we're not holding them to unrealistic standards of performance. we're not holding them to things that we wouldn't expect our own selves to be held to. There's an example that just came out recently of a certain company who had an edict come out that they wanted everyone in the office to return to work 2 days a week, return to the office 2 days a week. And that was if they lived within, 50 miles of a certain office location, right? That they could do that. And that was mandated for everyone across the company. Now, the person who put out the mandate apparently decided that that wasn't appropriate for them, and so they exempted themselves from that. Now, what does that tell the workforce for that company, right? How are they going to feel when they see that and know that, oh, well, you're telling us what to do, but you're not doing it? So we should do what you say, but not what you do.
Oh, I remember always this example by Marissa Mayer when she had her baby and she just had been appointed CEO of Yahoo. And she made it sound like it was really super easy to basically pop the baby out while you were working. But she didn't tell people that she spent $1 million in building a state-of-the-art nursery, had around the clock nurses in the office, in the room next door. Now, I want to make an assumption here that literally any working mother, given that she opened a door and there's 3 nurses and there's a room where your child is next door, would probably be also relatively productive if that was available. So the discrepancy between what I talk about and the dishonesty, really, what I talk about is possible. And this was one of Sheryl Sandberg's things as well, right? The lean in, which now is the opposite of leaning out, is the trend,
Right.
right? But the premise also was I went to Harvard. Well, that's not accessible for many people. And I had mentors because of my connections. That's also not accessible. And therefore, I am recommending everybody by leaning into utilize your network and finding a good mentor. Well, when you come from South Central Los Angeles, that's not going to be an option for you. So sometimes I agree that the bar is being set at a level of leadership that excludes pretty much 90% of everybody else. But maybe hope is what sells, right? If only I would be there, then X would be happening. And now I went completely on a tangent, but I think that specifically for working women, this is so unfair and how so much of it is being portrayed because my daughter has a baby and her child's not even 1 year old, and it is hard.
Oh, absolutely.
It is it's hard to reconcile all of that. Is being human spiritual? Or is or does spirituality include being human or humanity? How would you formulate that? Or can we even formulate that?
I haven't had that question before. I think it's a very interesting question. I would say I think there is something spiritual about it because when you're not looking at someone as an employee, when you're looking at someone as the sum total of who they are, right? Maybe they're a parent, maybe they're a spouse, maybe they're a brother, sister, daughter, maybe they are a volunteer in their community. They have all these different aspects to them. And their choice of religion or their choice of spirituality, those are also part of that, right? It makes up the whole person. I think when we can see people as that whole multidimensional person and appreciate all those different aspects of them, I think there is something eminently spiritual about that. Now, I'm not a spiritual expert, and I'm not an organized religion person, but I would consider myself spiritual. And I think that in that way, when we elevate the vibe that we're all operating on, I think that we come together in a different way and we can appreciate others in a different way. And I think that elevates humanity at the end of the day.
I think that's exactly right. And I was hoping you were going to go there because I do believe that showing the vulnerability and the humanity creates a particular kind of energy, and that energy that's more open and that has more resonance, if you so want to. And when you felt to write that note to the CEO and you had that resonance with that energy at that level that you literally put yourself in the line of getting fired for not following what was, I consider, a direct order, and you did the opposite of that, following that resonance because you felt that vibration on a probably spiritual, energetic level. And so did he, but they didn't feel that. So then that just shows you again in the corporate structure that if this resonance is not existent on certain levels, it can never work. Call that silos or call it idiots or call it old school leadership style. But it just means that there's something that's stuck because people are more concerned with protecting themselves. And what were these guys reading your letter anyway?
I don't know. I when I had sealed that envelope, it was an interoffice envelope for the company. So on the back, I had a big red confidential sticker on it that had sealed it together shut. And then I don't know if you remember, but they had like that little string that you would wind around the circles, and it would make like this infinity symbol and like a little 8. I had all that done up, right? So like it was sealed and confidential. And so to see that envelope on the table, and then to realize that it had been opened, there was
opened by somebody was intended for a complete breach of trust, a violation of the core values of the company, most likely, without a doubt. So yeah, so I think that, what I'm sort of taking away from what we're talking about here today is that I have to make a conscious decision to be that. I will say though, and I want to hear what you have to say about this, when you do that, it's not smooth sailing all the time.
No, it's not. And it does take a lot of courage. It does take a lot of human and relational skill muscle. And until those things are in muscle memory, those skills and those capabilities, and that way of just approaching leadership. And so a lot of what I talk about in my courses and in my masterclass that is coming out shortly is one of the hardest things as a leader you're going to do is to shift your paradigm around leadership. And you're thinking about that and your behaviors as a result. And until you can shift your thinking and challenge yourself about what you're thinking, your behaviors will never be any different. So it takes a lot of work, and it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yes, I can see that, because if you are stepping into this and you're stepping into the truth of what your truth is, and other people resonate with that, the outcome is not always favorable. The outcome could be not favorable.
Absolutely.
And then you just stepped in front of in the line of fire, and then people get very upset. But in the long run, I think this is the right thing to do. Sometimes in the process, man, you get bruised.
Oh, absolutely. There's a client that I've been working with recently, and she's in the process of looking for a new job. She had this interview last week, and she was so excited, and so we talked about it and tried to prep her for that. And then they got to the point where they wanted to do the negotiation, and we talked about how to approach that, and she could consider part of her elements of the package. She had the courage to call and to talk to the HR person. And essentially what happened was, because she started asking questions and she started challenging the status quo, this company ultimately told her, look, actually, we're going to pull the offer because we don't think you're going to be the right fit. That was after they had lowballed her on the salary, and they wouldn't consider raising her salary. And that was all she was asking for. And so like you said, there can be collateral damage. But I think when you are in a place where you start in that place, it becomes much easier to navigate that bumpy journey. And eventually you get to a place where it can be smooth sailing. But when you have people that are outliers in the organization who don't want to do that, and that's what systems will do, right? When there is an outlier, it will eject the outlier. It's so important that you find the right place for you to thrive and flourish in that kind of environment where companies put people first. And you can see it in their actions.
I love that. I mean, for me, this mantra for this year has been take away what is not mine so that what is mine can come in.
Yes. I love it.
And then a whole bunch of stuff starts to break.
Yes, exactly. It's sort of like it's sort of like magic too. You'll just feel it. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. And then you go like, wait. I didn't mean that, that suddenly there's all this friction everywhere. And then I have to remind myself nonstop. It's like, okay, I said what's not mine, take it away so that what is mine can kind of come in. So Jennifer, for somebody who's now listened to you and says, I need to know more, tell them where they can find the book and where they can find out more about you.
Sure. So if they'd like to learn more about me, they can find me online at drjennifernash.com. That's drjennifernash.com. And if they're interested in the book, Be Human, it's on this side. Be Human, Lead Human. They can find the book wherever they choose to purchase books. It's on Amazon. It's at Barnes & Noble. If they're in Canada, it's at Chapters. It's on all of the international Amazon websites as well. So Amazon Germany, Amazon UK. And yeah, drop me a note at my website. I'd love to hear from people about how this is working for them. And if they want to take the Human Leader Index that we talked about earlier, that's complimentary. So they can go to my website and they'll get this beautiful report that has a whole bunch of great information for them on how they can move their leadership forward.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast
Oh,
today.
likewise. Thank you so much, Beata, for having me.
And that is it for us for today. So remember that if you like this show, please go and give us a 5-star review. Share this particular episode with somebody who may benefit from some of the concepts around how to be or lead more human. And until I see you again next time, and goodbye. So appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode. Please subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star review, a comment, and share this episode with one more person so that you can help us help more people. Thank you again. Until next time. Goodbye.